Some parts of this episode experience technical difficulties. We apologize in advance.
Hello. Oh my goodness. It's episode number 2 of the Not So Black and White podcast. I'm Deanna and
I'm Tammy.
all right. So before we start our little chat today, we're going to start with a mindful moment. So if you're driving, please don't close your eyes. If you're not driving, please close your eyes if you are able. Just join us here for a quiet moment. Taking a nice deep breath, inhaling through the nose, and a nice deep exhale out of the mouth. Just taking this moment to allow ourselves to be present, to allow ourselves to settle in. And taking one more nice deep breath. And just slowly opening our eyes. I'm really excited today. Tammy and I are going to chat with you about mindful consumption. And just today, right before filming, I was speaking with someone and I told her, oh, we're going to have a podcast filming today. We're going to talk about mindful consumption. And she said, oh, so you guys are going to be talking about what foods to eat and what foods not to eat. And I said, oh. I said, well, actually, consumption is more than just what you eat. Now, of course, that is part, right? What we eat is important. Tammy, maybe you can tell us what are some of the other things that we're thinking about when we talk about mindful consumption besides just food?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, yes, food, but consumption on a whole is like what you're taking into your being in every sense. Like, for example, when you watch things, you're consuming the information that's there. When you are on social media scrolling or watching your YouTube videos, you're consuming all that information. You're consuming the ideas and beliefs of other people. And, when you're even talking to someone, like, you're consuming what they're putting out. Even this podcast right now, you listening or watching to us, you're consuming what we're like putting out there for you. And that's where mindfulness comes in because you're mindfully consuming and we're mindfully providing that information to you. We're thinking carefully about what we want to present. And so that's how today's episode comes out, like mindful consumption. We are trying to help to share some light on what consumption is, like more than being just like what you eat, and also how you can mindfully consume information, mindfully consume energies from people or whatever you're taking in your mind, body, and your spirit. So we're gonna talk today, like Deanna is gonna share with us from her perspective too, like what she does to mindfully consume in life.
Yeah. One thing Tammy and I were chatting about with before that I think is a great starting point, and you briefly mentioned already, is the news. And so consuming the news, one thing that helps me to think about is, our eyes, those are our portals of energy, right? And we absorb energy through our eyes with what we're looking at, what we're reading, what we're seeing on social media and watching the news, and it affects us vibrationally, all of those things. So if we are consuming low vibrational content, like the news, that is just, and I feel like, and maybe I'm wrong, we'd love to hear from you in the comments. If you think the news is a high vibration, please tell us. And we're open to hear that. For me, I have found it to be really low vibrational content. It's often based out of fear, a lot of scare tactics, and it just is overwhelming. I personally stopped watching the news over 10 years ago, and it was amazing, amazing. And, you know, I'd get a lot of flack kind of from people like, well, you know, how do you even know what's happening in the world? Well, let me tell you, you find out one way or the other. The big things, people are talking about it on the road, they're talking about it in a taxi somewhere. It finds you. It finds you. Yeah. So I don't feel out of the loop from, right? Say it again.
Oh, no, I was just saying, if the world is going to end, someone is going to call you and tell you.
Right. And that's been my experience. Like, I remember in 2016 when Trump was running for president, I think it was 2016 for the first time. My son lived in Hawaii, and he called me and he said, I know you don't watch the news, so you don't know what's happening. Donald Trump is running for president. And I was like, huh, you are kidding me. I didn't believe him. And then, of course, it's true. And then I said, oh, don't worry, he'll never win. And then he was like, all right. But see, I didn't need to be watching the news to find out. Like, somehow it comes to me. So with that said, I'd love for you, Tammy, to share what you were telling me about earlier about at your child's school and what that experience was like for you and your child.
Right. Yeah. So my sons were homeschooled before, and then when I started reintroducing them back into the public school system, there was one morning when it was still like right post COVID, and so virtual school was still a thing. And devotion is mandatory in the mornings at school. You know, like I'm usually skeptical about that because they're very harsh when delivering some messages about God sometimes, and it's not. I don't think it's child friendly a lot, but I let them because you know it's school and we're trying to assimilate and see how best we can work.
I want to interrupt you super quick for our non-Jamaican listeners, because this was new to me. Can you just tell us a little, what is devotion? Like in the public school setting, what is that, so that our friends from other places can have a little bit more of an understanding of these and things?
No problem. So devotion is like, it's a worship session basically at the start of school. So classes would start like at 8:30, but between 8 or 7:45 straight to 8:25, 8:30, there is a period of, it's like praise and worship, it's prayer time. Jamaica is very, very Christian, and because of that, it's mandatory in all public schools. To the point where you can get written up for not attending devotion. So it's just basically like, right, exactly. So, I mean, a teacher, the principal called me out already for not having my children present at devotion, because I said, school starts at 8:30, they're going to be there at 8:20. No, they need to be in devotion. It's mandatory. On their report card, there is a section for reverence. And for me,
I didn't even know that, so that's super helpful.
Wow. Right. I mean, it's not like in every public school, the reverence part on the report card, but most of them it is. And my son got marked down for reverence because I didn't like let them go to devotion every day. And that was wild, even to me growing up in the system. So yeah, so that was devotion. And what was wild for me that morning, there was some reports in the news a night or two before. There was some brutal crimes, including child murders. And lo and behold, in a class with 8-year-olds, devotion, after singing the praise and worship songs and praying, they were talking, did you see the news last night with your parents? Okay, a little child, as they went on to explain in detail, explicitly, the murder of the children and how you should watch news at night. And me, like a lot of things aren't very popular in Jamaica when it comes to like spirituality and mindfulness. For me, my journey of not watching the news is just like about 2 years old. I stopped watching the news just 2 years ago. And even now, I still get questions like, how you cannot watch news? How can you not watch the news? Like, what are you doing? Why are you not watching news? You can't live like that. Even mom would say stuff like, "Well, you're not going to find out anything in life if you don't watch the news," even though she calls me and tells me what the news
Right.
says.
Right.
So it was very painful for me. Yeah. And I even reached out to the teacher that morning. I told her I didn't think it was appropriate to be talking to the children, an 8-year-old, a class of 8-year-olds, about murder and things like that. And she was like, "Oh, but they need to know and they need to watch the news. Don't you watch the news?" And I said, "No, I don't watch the news." She was flabbergasted that I did not watch the news. And I was telling her, my children don't need to be hearing about murder at the start of their day at 7:45 in the morning to start their whole week on a Monday morning. It's not appropriate. It's not necessary. And she could not understand what I was saying or where I was coming from. She thought they needed to know what was happening in the news. And like I feel like this is even why this episode is so important to me right now. Growing up, we always knew as children the Jamaican prime time news comes on at 7. At 7 o'clock, you have to be so quiet. You have to be present. You can't excuse yourself and go find something else to do. You need to be sitting there with your parents, but you have to be quiet. No cartoon, no playing on any device, nothing at all. You have to pay attention. It's news time, and you just have to be there with the news. And then after the news is done, the adults spend another 30 minutes to an hour discussing all the crime that happened in the news. And then the next morning, it starts the same way because they watch the news at 6 a.m. in the morning again, which is a recap of last night's news. So, yeah, I feel like, watching the news, and I learned this on my journey, like, of becoming spiritual. I learned that fear is the lowest vibration there is. And when you look at it as, you just said, Diana, the news is filled with scare tactics. It's filled with fear. And if you think about it, your eyes, as you just said, the windows to your soul, the portal, if all you're consuming is all that fear, that negativity, that low vibrational information, what are you becoming? If you are what you eat, and put it wider, if you are what you consume, what are you becoming? Like I, for one, Diana, I'm sure you're gonna share, but for me, ever since I started watching the news and started becoming mindful of the information that I consume, that I take into myself, I have become less fearful in life. I have become less miserable. I have become less edgy because I am lessening the amount of low vibrational frequency that I'm taking into myself. And it's been a whole game changer for me because when you watch the news and you're seeing all that going crazy or awry in the world, even if you're not consciously acting out on it, your cells, your atoms, your very being is responding to all that negativity. And it affects you. You become edgy, you become fearful, you become hyper vigilant, which is also fearful. So it does change your life and your world when you reduce those negative things that you take in.
Right. And I think too that, it's not just, oh, we're just going to pretend nothing bad is happening in the world. It's not that, right? Because, yes, we need to understand like what's happening. I get that. I also, for me, go, okay, but how can I really help them? Right. So, I don't want to get into politics. It's certainly not the purpose of our podcast, but thinking about, what's happening in Gaza, Israel, all of that. I know that is a big, big thing. Right. and it's atrocious and it's horrible and people are dying and they are suffering. So for me, I asked myself, okay, well, how can I help? I can't go there and stop what's happening. I can't do that. That's not within my locus of control. I'm not, it's just not. And so again, I just have to think of, what can I do? And we can do something simple like, how about be nice to every person that I come in contact with today? Like if all of us did something simple like that, of just going, you know what? I am going to do my inner work so that when I talk to Tammy or I talk to, Mr. Joe on the street or whoever, that I am able to do that in a kind and compassionate way. That is helping the world right there. So maybe I can't fix what's happening in Gaza, but it doesn't help for me to then go around just saying how terrible that is. And yeah, that doesn't help. Is it terrible? Yes. And I'm not saying either that we shouldn't be activists and advocate, for big things. Absolutely. But watching the news daily and just consuming that, like Tammy said, that negative energy, that fear, we then become that. And then when I turn around and talk to someone on the street, I'm not able to be nice to them. I'm not able to be compassionate because I am terrified or scared and upset because that's what I'm taking in. And I also think about that with social media. So being mindful of who do you follow on social media so that when we are scrolling, let's be real, we all do it. If you're on social media, at some point, you are scrolling. And what is coming up in your feed, so for me, I'm trying to follow other accounts that are doing Reiki, doing yoga, doing things like I'm doing too, so that that's what I'm seeing in my feed. And again, it's that balance of you're not trying to ignore everything that's happening in the world. It's not about what I call toxic positivity, because that's a thing too. Like there are negative things happening in the world. Absolutely. It's just being mindful of how we consume that and then how we put that back out into the world with our own vibration, right? Yeah. So what else were we talking about earlier? Oh, I know. What about we just had Christmas for a lot of us, right? Not everyone celebrates Christmas, but December is often, a gift giving season. And so we were thinking about consumption in terms of gifting for others, also, things that we just buy for ourselves. So Tammy, you were talking to me earlier about how when you can keep giving a gift to someone when it's not gift giving season in a more mindful way. So talk to us about that. What does that look like?
So, like, we know that there are seasons when we give a lot of gifts. The consumerism, when it's Christmas time, when it's like, the holiday period when everybody's buying gifts. But a lot of times I find that we don't think mindfully about how we can actually give gifts, because people need things outside of Christmas. And getting somebody a handbag, yeah, that's a nice gift, but think about if you get them a gift card to somewhere that they can actually maybe buy other things that they may need rather than that what they want. Um, Even like in Jamaica here, there are gift cards that you can buy like Paymaster or so, where people can use those credits to pay bills. They can use those credits to pay for the internet, stuff like that. Even if they can afford it, it's still a nice gift to give, because when you help them cover maybe a bill for this month, they can focus on something else that they truly need to focus on that they may not have been able to focus on because they have so many other things to do. It's important to realize that gift giving is not just for consumerism. It's not just to show on social media that you're giving a gift for the holidays. Gift giving is supposed to be coming from within you. You have someone that you value and that you care for. And on a random Tuesday morning, you decide to send them a $30 gift card for whatever, or Amazon, or even like paying a flow bill for their internet or their JPS light bill. That gift will speak so much more volume than just buying
Yeah.
something random in a store on Christmas Day. Imagine if you wake
Right.
up, you check your phone whenever you do check your phone, and you see someone in your family or just someone who you have a relationship with, someone who cares for you, and they say, "Hey, I thought of you and I'm sending you a gift." You are going to feel so warm, so lit up inside because there's more value behind that. They're just genuinely thinking about you on a seemingly random day and
Right.
gifting you. That in itself is so beautiful. And even so, like, think about when you're purchasing those gifts, or as Diana said, when you're purchasing things for yourself, think about how you're doing that. Because you can, for me, for example, I used to like to buy hair products online, or when someone is coming down from the States, I ask them to get me something specific. And then I started thinking, hmm, the amount of resources, as Diana put it, that go into getting something from abroad to Jamaica, the money that goes into it, the shipping, the packaging, everything, when I
Mhm.
think about it, I can get something here that reduces that carbon footprint, that reduces those things. So for me, one thing that I did last week, I feel really good within myself about it, so I'm sharing it. I found this hair product line in Jamaica, Honey Vera. This is not an ad, but it's an it's
You're
an
not
all
getting
natural
paid for
line.
this to mention the
Not
product,
getting
you
paid
mean?
for this,
No. Okay.
right? Right, but I find that I have to talk about it because it is. Imagine this: I was buying Jamaican black castor oil products from an American company before, but I live in Jamaica. Right, right. So thinking about it now in a mindful way, with mindful consumption, I have now found a product line that has Jamaican black castor oil in Jamaica that is locally made, that I literally just go in her store and pick it up, pay for it, and bring it home. And
Right.
it's been working wonders. It's been working wonders for my daughter, who has extremely sensitive skin and is allergic to a lot of stuff, it seems. And I find that, when I think about it that way, it works out best because now I'm thinking about it like deeply. I'm mindful about it. What am I buying? What am I using in my skin? Why am I getting Jamaican products from a different country when I live in Jamaica? That made no sense, but I was doing it for years. So definitely how you consume things, again, with the word consumption. I feel like I want to say the word so much because even for myself, previously, when we think about consumption, we're thinking about food. We're thinking about things that we're ingesting. We're not locally, I don't know about other cultures, places in the world may actually use the word as widely as it is meant to be used. But I am aware that here in Jamaica, a lot of us, when we hear the word consumption, we are thinking about food. And it's important to realize that consumption is so much more than just eating. It is, as you said at the start, it's what you take in to your very
Right.
essence, what you are reading, what you're seeing with your eyes, what you're listening to. And quickly before I go to Diana, I just want to say, as I just said, listening, something big that changed my entire being was the music that I listen. I I'm a music lover. I used to listen to like every genre depending on my mood. I would just go with the vibe. And then I started realizing that the things I'm listening to, I am
Mhm.
becoming them. I am
Mhm.
dreaming about things. I am feeling differently when I listen to different things. And so now I am mindful when consuming music. And if I'm in a low vibrational state, I'll mindfully choose the music that I'm going for, and I will listen it, and I realize that it elevates me. It changes how I feel. And I just wanted to add, be mindful of the music that you consume and think about the words, the vibration. Think about how you feel when you listen to certain things, and just realize that that feeling is going in you. It is becoming you. So be mindful.
Yeah. And I'd like to jump right on that, what you're talking about. And I love how you said, how does it make you feel? Because that is feeding into your vibration. You can also see, where do you feel it in your body when you're listening to a certain song? And I was talking with my husband about this recently, in terms of, like thinking about chakras, your energy centers, right? And so, and that's just one way of looking at energy. But if you're not familiar with the chakras, just think of, coming straight up the body here. We have different energy centers. The ones that are here, there's the lowest, right? And then they come up. We need all of that kind of energy. So not getting stuck in this place of, oh, low vibration is always bad. No, not necessarily, right? There's a balance. But when you're listening to music, just taking a moment and closing your eyes and going, where do I feel it in my body? Like, do I feel it in a certain place? And for me, if I'm listening, no offense meant to anyone, but, like some gangster rap or hip hop, I've got T.I. Paper Trail on my iPad, like I do sometimes like that. But when I listen to that kind of music, I am feeling it more down here. Like it's very, this is our chakra here for sexuality, creativity, like I feel that kind of music here. And then I go listen to something that's maybe a little bit lighter with a different kind of message. I don't want to speak to certain artists here and, how to compare, but, I might feel that more up in my chest area, like my heart chakra. It's lighter, it's different. Now, don't get me wrong. Like, I'm not saying one kind of music is bad and this one is preferable. No, you listen to what you want to listen to. There's nothing wrong with that. It goes back to that piece around being mindful. Like how you feel when you listen to that. Where does it show up in the body? And then, like Tammy was saying, what are the lyrics? What are they talking about? If you are constantly listening to music with very negative lyrics and vibe all the time, that's all you hear, and that's what you're consuming, that's going to affect how you feel. And then ultimately, it affects how you treat other people. Because when you feel good, you can treat other people good. It's easier to do that. When we don't feel good, it's harder to be nice and treat other people nicely because we don't feel good. Again, I'm not judging any kind of music, because I certainly have music that does not have nice lyrics and it is vibrating down here. And there are moments when I'm like, yeah, man, that is what I need today, and so honoring. Right. Yeah. And so again, just it all goes back to really being mindful, being aware, being conscious about it, and then choosing what you need in that moment, So just again, I think if we have to say anything for a takeaway for today, it is just being aware of what you're taking in, being aware that it's more than just food. And that way you can choose what it is you want to consume, so you can choose how you want that to affect you, right? And I loved, Tammy, what you shared about the hair products and finding something local. But I also want to say, again, like there's no judgment here. I just ordered a planner and my favorite pens on Amazon, and I know that is coming from far, all the resources to get that here to me. But I was very mindful, thinking I can't get it here. That's the thing. Like I can't. And so it's the balance of how much do I really need this or want this? And is that a match with the energy and resources that it needs to get here? And then can I balance that by, okay, I'm just going to get those two things. I don't order on Amazon very often, sometimes because I ain't got the money to do that. Let's be real. And other times it's because whatever it is, I don't really need it, and if I take pause and give myself some time to really think about that, then that's being mindful of consumption. It doesn't mean if I really want it, I'm going to buy it. I'm going to go and do that. And that's okay. It's just, I think back to when I lived in the States and, you have Amazon Prime and I can get something here in 2 days. And then I've got a million things in my Amazon cart and I'm just like, blah, 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 bye. So I'm not really thinking about it. It's just, oh, it's easy. Right. It's convenient. I want this. All I have to do is click a button. Here it comes, but now I've just shifted where let me be more mindful about that. That doesn't mean that version of me was a bad thing or that shopping is a bad thing. It's not. Just taking a little time to really be mindful about that can make such a difference in your own vibration and world, but for everybody else too, so that there's some thought there about the collective and not just us, right? So do you have any tips for us, Tammy? Any tips that you want to share around how we can be more mindful with our consumption?
Definitely. So in everything that we do, I think it's important to take a minute and think. Like something that really helps me when it comes to consumption overall is to not hurry. Don't rush through decisions. When you're gonna get something, whether it's to eat, to listen, to buy something that you're giving someone, regardless of what it is, something that you're gonna watch, but try not to be like a spur of the moment thing. Try not to hurry when you're doing these things. Try to think about it first and know, like, is this what I truly want? Be intentional, be mindful with what you're doing. When it comes to like social media, for me, I'm gonna hand over to Gianna soon because she gave me a tip earlier, like when we were talking before, and I'm gonna use that because it makes so much sense. But for me, TikTok is a thing we know with our generation, with Gen Zs, with millennials. TikTok can be very addicting. For me, what I do is I schedule my TikTok time. Oh. So I give myself right. I know if I go on TikTok, I might get lost in the rabbit hole because there's a lot there. And even when like I mindfully follow people, so I choose carefully, as Diana said, she follows people who does the things that she's doing or things that she wants to do. So it can be like a mindful choice. I do the same when it comes to people I follow. However, their information in itself is overwhelming in the amount of things that you can learn. And because of that, I used to, when I go on TikTok, I'll be on it at 10 a.m. and I'll be scrolling and I'll be watching videos. And then I look up, it's 12. Oh, wow. And I'll still be scrolling and watching. And then I look up and it's 2. And I'm like, wait, what? So I decided to schedule my TikTok time. So I give myself an hour. Some days when I'm doing well, I give myself an hour and a half. And I use that for my TikTok time. I set like a little alarm at the end of the time. So when it goes off, I know, okay, it's time to go. We'll come back here tomorrow. I'll probably mark something as favorite, but I try to do that on a consistent basis because it now helps me to be mindful of the amount I'm consuming. And it also helps me to be mindful of the time that I'm spending because time is currency. If I sit down and use TikTok for 4 hours out of my 24 hours, then that would become a waste because then I wouldn't be thinking or being mindful of what I'm using that time for. So my tip is try to give yourself little routines when you can. If you know you love something and you want to use it. If you want to watch the news, maybe watch news once a week or twice a week, not like an everyday type of thing, not like a every time the news is scheduled type of thing, but
Right.
just be mindful of when and how you. So yeah, those are my tips. And Deanna was telling me earlier about not having her notifications on. I'd love for you to tell us more about that and your other tips on how to be mindful when consuming things.
Well, so what we were talking about earlier was notifications. So I started years ago. Now, this was after I left school administration. I wish I would have known this before, but I just turn all the notifications off on my phone. So I do not get notifications when someone links me on Instagram, no email notifications. Okay, that's not totally true. I have WhatsApp notifications. I allowed that one, but that is it. And so, and I keep my phone personally, I keep my phone on silent because I don't make a sound when someone is reaching out to me. And I was telling Tammy the other day, I was in a taxi at nighttime and the taxi driver's phone rang. And my goodness, his phone rang and the flashlight on his phone starts flashing like a strobe light as it's ringing and it's playing music. So I was like, my goodness, I can't even imagine. I'm thinking to myself, is that what happens every time his phone rings? Like, that is a lot of energy going into him, not to mention everybody around you is now subjected to all of this noise that your phone is making. So my tip for mindful consumption is to think about your notifications, think about the sounds that your phone is making, and do you maybe want to make some changes there? I mean, it's up to you. Maybe you don't want to be quite as shut down in that way that I am, where I'm like, no notifications, no sounds, nothing, that's fine. Maybe that doesn't work for you. But again, it goes back to that piece of just being mindful. And I know for me, when my phone used to give me a notification, it would ding and I would feel it in my belly right away. And what that is really, it's the back. That's my kidneys. I'm releasing adrenaline. Ching! As soon as I hear that, ching, ching. And as I can just think about if that is happening 40 times a day, it's like then, and maybe your body doesn't react like that. But again, it's being mindful. So for me, my body became conditioned to that, to release adrenaline because, oh, it's time to do something now. It's time to check that message, check this email. And so without the notifications and the sounds, that helped me to re-regulate my nervous system, because then I'm noticing all those little pings that are causing my body to react. That was affecting me, and over time just exhausting me. And so, and then it's, for lack of a better way in this moment, it's training people like your friends and family, whoever, what your boundaries are around that. So people know Deanna puts her phone on airplane mode at 6 o'clock at night. You will not reach me after 6 o'clock at night. And for me, I have to have that mindful boundary so that I am not tempted to mindlessly start consuming again. Like, oh, the phone is on. If my phone is on and it lights up, I'm like, oh, Tammy's texting me. I wonder what she wants. And then I go to look at it and I'm like, no, after 6 o'clock, we're not doing that. So that way, at that time, I know there's no more consumption for me through my phone. And of course, I have an iPad. I have a laptop. So you have to be mindful of going, okay, the phone might be off. Is it going to come through my iPad? Is it going to come through? Let's put the iPad away. So again, so for me, that is my tip, is being mindful, considering your notifications, considering the sounds that your phone is making when those things come, and just seeing if you maybe need to make some adjustments there so that you can be more present and not so affected by those. So, anything else, Tammy, before we close off today that you want to add? Or
I mean, I think that is it for now. I really like that you talked about where you were feeling that being. You taught me something just now because I keep my phone on silent all the time. Because every time, like before when I used to hear that bing, I used to feel it like I would feel whenever the phone bings, I'm like, and then over time, I even developed this level of anxiety where I would hear the binging, and if I hear like more than two, I get nervous. I can't check my phone because I feel like too much is happening. And you just taught me something, and I really have to just point that out and say thank you.
Yeah. Awesome. Amazing. Well, with that said, why don't we close our episode today with a mindful moment again? So again, if you are driving and listening, do not close your eyes, but if you can, please take a moment here with us, closing the eyes and just allowing this conversation that we had to just kind of settle into your being. Letting go of what doesn't resonate. Maybe you still need some time to contemplate after today's episode. If you have time after this episode finishes and if you feel called, I invite you to just sit in silence for a few minutes, contemplating mindful consumption, seeing what resonated today, maybe what questions you have. Just giving yourself a little time to digest before running off to the next content. So taking a nice deep breath here, inhaling through the nose and a nice deep exhale out of the mouth. We thank you so much for joining us today. Please do drop us some comments. We love to hear from you. We love to hear from you if you have some suggestions for mindful consumption that maybe we didn't talk about today, because it's a wide topic. Sure, there's lots of other ways out there that you might be practicing, and we'd love to hear from you. If this was new to you and something that you hadn't thought about, we'd love to hear from you too, of what questions do you have? What are those thoughts? Please share.
Yes, yes. And if you have anything in particular that you'd like us to talk about in a future episode, touch on, then we'd love to hear from you about that too. And we will be here on Wednesdays for you at 7 p.m. And you can always rewatch, re-listen, just to, sometimes when we listen to something a second time, we get more things than we got the first time. So that would be good. And again, we'd love to hear from you. You can leave a comment. You can share it to someone who you feel would benefit from our conversation.
That's a good one, Tammy. Yes. Sharing is caring. And I've heard this here in Jamaica, but I'm sure it's for other places too. But each one teach one. So if you learned something today that you find is helpful, then you can help change the world by helping somebody else to learn something new as well. So yeah, man. Well, thank you. So we'll end our episode 2, and we are so excited to see you or hear you, or you hear us next week with our next episode. And that topic is a surprise because I can't remember it in this moment. So we'll see, but we will see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.